Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly hyped to have you here today because we are diving into something absolutely profound. Usually when we talk about the world's great artists, we tend to only look at them through the lens of their finished, polished masterpieces. But today, we're flipping the script. We're looking at the raw, unyielding mindset that actually made those masterpieces possible in the first place. We're going to step into the shoes of Vincent van Gogh to explore a totally radical philosophy of personal and artistic worth. Okay, let's just jump right in. I want to kick things off by throwing this really provocative question your way. Just think about it for a second. We live in a world that absolutely demands receipts, right? Did you get that promotion? How many followers do you have? What are your sales numbers looking like? We are so deeply conditioned to believe that our worth is this moving target, something we have to constantly earn through achievements and, external validation. But today, we're going to hold that modern obsession up against a much deeper, way more enduring truth. And that truth is brilliantly captured right here. In a letter Vincent wrote to his brother Theo back in January of 1885, he says, "If I am worth anything later, I am worth something now. For wheat is wheat, even if people think it is a grass in the beginning." Man, that gives me chills. This is our focal point today. This single quote just completely shatters the illusion that worth is something you have to earn or prove to anyone. It's a flat-out declaration that your value isn't something you build. It is something you inherently possess.
Section 1. The Illusion of Valuation. Escaping the Metrics of Worth.
We've basically been tricked, frankly, into treating ourselves like temporary scaffolding. Something purely utilitarian that's just meant to be tossed aside once the actual structure emerges. But that mindset completely misses the magic of what it means to be a work in progress. So we often confuse two critical concepts, value and valuation. Your value is your inherent worth. Think of a diamond buried deep in the dirt. It's still a diamond, right? It's unchanging. Valuation, on the other hand, is just the world's shifting opinion. It's the algorithm, it's the critics, the public applause. Valuation is entirely unreliable. Getting recognized doesn't magically create value. It only reveals what was already sitting there all along. Consider a raw, functionless object like the sculpture material you're seeing here. A fascinating philosophy thesis we reviewed actually points out that if a piece of work goes from being completely ignored to suddenly being worth millions of dollars, literally nothing about the essence of the work itself has changed. Changes in public opinion are just what this thesis calls accidents in metaphysics, basically just accidents of time and place. The context might shift, the valuation might absolutely skyrocket, but the inherent status and value of the object itself, or the artist for that matter, remains exactly the same.
Section 2. The Roots of Rejection, Buried Before Sprouting. To really grasp how Van Gogh internalized all this, we got to look at the sheer amount of dirt he was buried under before he ever sprouted into the legend we know today. Because look, the guy didn't start out celebrated. Let's walk through this timeline. In 1878, he straight up fails his university entrance exams for theology. A few months later, denied funding at a training school. By 1879, he takes this grueling job ministering to desperately poor coal miners in the Born Age, but he's so overzealous and abrasive that the church committee literally dismisses him. He is a complete failure as a clergyman. He's wandering around ashamed, alienated from his family, and it's out of that profound, crushing rejection that in 1880, he finally decides to pivot and become an artist.
And you'd think, okay, he found his calling, so cue the applause, right? Well, no. Look at this number, 1. That is the shockingly low number of paintings Vincent van Gogh reportedly sold in his entire lifetime. Critics completely dismissed his work as clumsy. He battled severe poverty, deep depression. To put that into perspective, his public valuation, literally a single sale, was completely, entirely disconnected from his true, immense artistic value.
Section 3. The Sower and the Seed, Art as the Ultimate Harvest.
So how on earth did a guy facing such relentless rejection keep his belief in his own worth alive? Well, he turned back to his religious roots and found a lot of comfort in the agricultural metaphors of the Bible. Van Gogh deeply identified with the parables of the mustard seed and the sower. The mustard seed is humble and tiny, but it grows into something massive. And the sower scatters seeds. Some hit bad soil, sure, but some find good soil and multiply. Vincent realized that, maybe he failed as a traditional evangelist, but as an artist, he could successfully sow seeds of comfort, hope, and new life right onto his canvases. To him, art and evangelism were serving the exact same higher purpose.
He was super driven by this beautiful French phrase he found in a book, "Ce qui ne passe dans ce qui passe." It translates to what does not pass in what passes, essentially finding the eternal within the ephemeral. Van Gogh wasn't interested in a quick hit of temporary fame. He was on a mission to capture the eternal, unchanging essence of life, nature, and humanity, even while he was stuck in the middle of his own very temporary suffering.
And you can literally see this eternal perspective plastered across his most famous motifs. He painted the sower over and over again, representing birth, rebirth, giving life under this blazing sun. But then, he also painted the reaper. He viewed humanity just like wheat. We grow, we submit to the cycles of nature, and eventually, when we're ripe, we're reaped. But here's the kicker. To Van Gogh, the reaper wasn't this sorrowful, dark figure of doom. Nope. He painted death on the verge of a smile, playing out in a field just drenched in golden light. It's not a tragedy, it's just a natural harvest.
Section 4. Wheat is wheat. The illusion of becoming.
All right, let's pull this back to the present moment for us and really challenge this pervasive illusion of becoming, this toxic idea that we only matter once we've reached some final, successful, polished state. As one of our sources beautifully puts it, every runner was once someone standing still, running on the fuel of not yet. We constantly paint our present in the shades of preparation. But you know what? Those stumbling blocks, those messy, imperfect attempts, the anxious heartbeats, that's life. That is raw, real life happening right now. You don't sit on the couch and hope that someday you will magically become the person who runs. You run today.
You don't plant grass and just cross your fingers hoping it turns into wheat. It was always wheat. Van Gogh's letters to his brother weren't just preparation for his artistic journey, they literally were the journey. His rough sketches that didn't make the cut of fame were painted by the exact same hands that painted the sunflowers. Art doesn't wait around for mastery, mastery waits for art. The raw state, like the unformed material you see here, has total, undeniable value.
Vincent knew this in his bones. He wrote, "If I make better work later, I still won't work otherwise than now. I mean, it will be the same apple, only riper. I myself won't turn from what I've thought from the start." I absolutely love that. He's telling us that creating better or more mature work later on doesn't invalidate the work you are doing right this second. It just matures it. If you're going to be good later, you are good now.
Section 5. The Wheat Mindset. Cultivating Inherent Worth.
So what's the takeaway here? How do we actually apply this and cultivate this sense of inherent worth in our own lives, especially when we're in the trenches of our own creative or professional struggles? Well, here are some really powerful, practical steps straight from Van Gogh's playbook. First, grow in silence. Wheat doesn't scream while it grows. Second, trust your roots, even if absolutely no one is watering you right now. Third, understand that the harvest comes in due time. Recognition might be late, it might never come, but that doesn't alter your value one bit. Fourth, shine light on others. When you see someone else's early grass, treat it with the respect of wheat. And finally, polish, don't perform. Put your energy into refining your skills and your integrity, rather than just chasing applause at the cost of your true self.
Because at the end of the day, all that external noise, it's just noise. As that philosophical thesis we looked at explores, critics are going to battle, opinions will shift, historical context will completely change. A critic might hate a piece of art on Tuesday and declare it a masterpiece on Thursday. The price tag might jump from $0 to $100 million. But the essential, independent, inherent quality of the artwork itself, it never changed, not even a fraction.
Van Gogh saw the natural cycle of wheat as a direct, literal metaphor for the human spirit. In a letter to his sister Will, he wrote this incredibly beautiful line: "What the germinating force is in a grain of wheat, love is in us." That's the spark. That is what drives us to create, to connect, and to endure the hard times. And that internal force is completely, 100% untethered from the world's external valuation.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought. You honestly don't need a blue checkmark, a fancy promotion, or a critic's glowing review to be valuable. The question is, will you wait for the world to finally call you wheat? Or will you recognize your own unshakable, inherent worth in the grass today? Think about that for a bit. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I really hope you carry a little piece of that wheat mindset into whatever it is you're creating next.